Welcome to the Get to the Root podcast, where we build your health from the ground up. At Root Functional Medicine, we're on a mission to bring sustainable and validated functional medicine to the world. As a team of doctors and dietitians, we are dedicated to treating gut health, hormones, autoimmune conditions, and metabolic health at the root cause through advanced testing, food as medicine, and telehealth programs. For years, we've been helping people get to the root of their health concerns. Now, we're here to share our knowledge so you can benefit too. Stay tuned and join us as we get to the root.
Welcome back to the Get to the Root podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Armstrong, and I am very excited to be here today with two of our original dietitians at Root. We have Kelsey Stricklen, who is now our Chief Creative Officer, but she's been with me since day one and the beginning of our doctor-dietitian model, and Amy Masterson, who is our lead dietitian, also there very shortly, close to the beginning. So before we get going, let's briefly go back to those beginning days when we were setting up this model that is kind of our secret sauce, our core model, our doctor-dietitian team working together for individuals to improve their health at the root cause. So I knew when starting Root that I definitely wanted my partner to be a dietitian. And why? Why was that? Well, nutrition is core to functional medicine. And I was self-aware. I knew that I really didn't get a lot of nutrition training in medical school. Even though I loved it, I was an athlete in college and I was very interested in nutrition. And I tried to learn as much as I could. And then through functional medicine training, yes, we definitely got more, but nowhere near the level of dietitians who have master's level education. And they are the experts in food and food as medicine. And then our dietitians in particular have additional functional medicine training. And so in the beginning, we were trying to figure out our model, and we actually, I think from the very beginning, offered this doctor-dietitian package, which was our most popular package, thankfully. But at the time, people didn't really understand functional medicine. So they didn't understand how big of a part nutrition was in that. And sometimes they would just think that, they just needed one visit with the doctor. And I was happy to do that. I loved working with people. But at the same time, the back of my mind, I was like, well, they don't want to add a dietitian visit. I don't know how this is going to go, because the results that we were getting when we worked together were so great. And I wanted that for everyone. And so eventually, we did make it part of our business model that everyone worked with both people. And today, people love working with our dietitians. They help me out so much. So long intro, but welcome, Kelsey and Amy. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this and working with you. And so, Kelsey, I'm thinking back to the beginning, how did you feel about partnering with a doctor?
Yes, I thought that it was absolutely amazing. I had tried to do the private practice thing on my own as a solo dietitian and had definitely ran into some challenges. There was a lot of times where people really needed more medical guidance, and I really needed to stay in my scope of practice as a dietitian. So I think it's really mutually beneficial. The dietitians can lean on the doctors and refer to the doctor when necessary, and the doctors can lean on the dietitians. So the doctors can spend more of their time really helping people get to the root cause rather than having to stress about doing all of that and doing nutrition education in the same visit.
Yeah, I'm remembering some back in our early days when you were running the PCOS program, Kelsey, and you would get lab abnormalities, and I was right next door, and you'd be like, hey, can you help me with this? And sometimes we had to make new diagnoses, which, as you know, are not in the scope. Dietitians can't legally make diagnoses. So we had that mutual collaborative relationship, and it was so fun learning so much more about nutrition and then being able to step in, when necessary for people.
Yeah. The PCOS program was fabulous, and I definitely enjoyed running it and seeing members in the PCOS program. But I remember one thing we often run into is finding Hashimoto's in the lab work. And then that's not something a dietitian can necessarily treat. Like, they're going to need medication management. So it's so nice to be able to just refer to the doctor for that right in house.
Yeah. So for the audience who might not know what Hashimoto's is, this is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And it's very common for women with PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome to have a thyroid condition that we unveil as part of, digging deep for root causes. And so shortly after we got going in our model, we had connected with Amy Masterson, who's now our lead dietitian. And our dietitians are unique and they actually cook and they make these amazing recipes and they're really good at meal prep. They truly walk the walk. And so, Amy, one of our first experiences in working with you was she hosted a meal prep class. So tell us about how that went.
Yes, I will never forget this day. We did a meal planning and prep class, and it was amazing because in my previous experiences as a dietitian, I had worked with other doctors who maybe did not necessarily believe in the importance of nutrition. And then I had this wonderful doctor-dietitian team reach out to me to help put on a class for meal planning and preparation. And so we did this class. I think we had like 30 people making 3 meals. So ended up being like 90 meals in an hour. I'll never forget like getting all of the groceries for that and everything. But it was a great experience, obviously. Connected me with the two of you and brought me onto the team. But I do think that's one of the things that sets us apart. Being authentic is one of our core values, and all of our dietitians absolutely love nutrition and cooking. So we are able to help people, talking about what their actual nutrition plan is, but then how do you implement it? Like, how do you get in your kitchen and actually do it?
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. That class was so fun, and I was so impressed with you. I'm pretty sure it was like 90 degrees that day too, if I recall, like just dripping sweat, carrying all those bags of groceries in.
We oversold the class, so we were literally like, you could hardly move your arms to the side, but people were so happy, and we were so calm and cool on this very hot day. We knew we had to work with Amy, and we've been together. It's been like 5 or 6 years since. So yes. Love that little interview that you did in meal prep. So we often say in functional medicine that you can't practice functional medicine without nutrition. Can one of you kind of tell me a little bit more about how functional nutrition is different from, kind of that nutrition advice you might get from, a hospital dietitian, which some of our dietitians were in their past lives. How are we different in a functional method of kind of practicing nutrition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give this a go. So functional nutrition is a holistic approach that uses food as medicine to address the root causes of imbalances and restore health. So we really take into account your whole body, your lifestyle, your genetics, all of your health concerns. And we sometimes use advanced testing to create personalized eating plans. And I would say compared to conventional nutrition, we dig deeper. We spend more time with people. We ask more questions. We're always asking why. Mm-hmm. So an example here, so this might make a little bit more sense, would be like if somebody has irritable bowel syndrome with diarrhea or IBS-D. So a conventional dietitian might offer them a low FODMAP diet with just a little bit of education, send them on their way. Whereas a functional dietitian might start with a low FODMAP, but make sure we educate the person that this is just for symptom relief, immediate symptom relief, but we're going to actually start digging for root causes. So we might do microbiome testing and look for issues like low digestive enzymes, inflammation, or overgrowth. We also might focus more on eating behaviors, stress, chewing your food well, and perhaps something like the use of bitter foods to support digestion while looking for root causes, not just using a Band-Aid, which is what the low FODMAP diet would be if that was the only intervention.
Yeah, that's a really great example of that access to that advanced testing and then knowing how to use that test results to translate it into actionable steps that make sense for that individual rather than kind of like the blanket, everyone gets the same handout that, conventional dietitians are wonderful. They personally help me and my family, but their constraints and what they have access to and the time that they have with people and their team, a lot of them aren't partnering with a functional medicine doctor, can support that. And they also don't have the same amount of time in their schedule for, I think one of the key things that you all do is, health happens outside of a doctor or dietitian visit, right? And so we need to be able to support people through those changes. And Amy, that you're key in this because you lead our Root community. So can you kind of give some examples of how the dietitians contribute to the success of people by providing that support in between visits?
Yes, definitely. I was going to add on to that one of the things that's so helpful for us is that we do have follow-up with people. Even if a conventional medicine dietitian does give someone a low FODMAP handout and they have every intention of, wanting to follow up with that person and expanding their diet from there. But if they don't have a follow-up visit, then they can't do that. I will never forget that we had one person come to work with us at Root, and she did end up doing gut health testing, and she had been on a low FODMAP diet for 7 years. And there was essentially no good bacteria growing in her microbiome. So it was just kind of crazy to see those results and what that can do, because we know that those high FODMAP foods, are full of prebiotic fiber that feed the gut bacteria. So if you're doing that for too long, then that's not going to be the outcome that you want. And we were able to help this person because we had that information. Within our Root community, we have just a lot of resources. We have events going on all the time where we're talking about gut health. We actually have a Root Talk recording that talks exactly about low FODMAP diet and when that could be used, but then also talks about gut health, eating for microbiome health in general, and talks about what good things to include versus just what things to be cutting out to support gut health through nutrition. We have lab interpretation resources. So if you did do testing with us, you can go into our Root community and see some of those resources. And we have check-ins. We have a space where people can ask dietitians any questions, not that we can necessarily give, completely individualized or personal information through this Root community. But if people have general questions about anything, we are able to provide support there in any way that we can. And we also do, I mentioned different events and challenges where we can kind of give people a lot of information about some of these foundational things that we are trying to help people build and set up. And these challenges allow people to kind of see all of that together and see what works well for them or not.
Yeah, and it's great that the members kind of support each other too, because then you've got all kinds of helpful ideas that might work for you. I personally took part in the challenge. It was life-changing. I came in singing Taylor Swift, Look What You Made Me Do, when I brought in this wonderful meal prep that Amy helped me with. And and so I'm continuing with this. Love what you all are doing in the community. I also love that case that you brought up with how nutrition can actually change your biochemistry. And you think you're doing the right thing for people by prescribing a diet, but not having the ability to follow up and actually see how that's changing the microbiome and not enough good beneficial bacteria to protect that gut and set yourself for actual gut healing. Yeah, that's a really important point. I'm glad you made that, Amy. So, over the years, we've figured these things out, right? We've figured out what actually works for people by continuing to work together and iterate. And one of our core values is innovate and empower. And so let's walk through some of those foundational principles that we use at Root. So can one of you kind of tell me a few of those foundational principles?
Yes, of course. So there are a lot of foundational things that we love working with people on. This could include things like balancing blood sugar. This is important for everyone. If someone has high fasting blood sugar or insulin resistance, it's going to be especially important, but it truly is important for every single person. So this is a main thing that we work on with people. And I'm sure we'll talk about our Root plate a little bit on this episode, including anti-inflammatory foods, adequate hydration, slowing down and chewing well to support digestion, eating enough, honestly. I think a lot of times we see people that are maybe coming from more of a place of restriction than a place of nourishment. So we really want to make sure that people are eating enough. And this means enough overall. It means enough protein. It means enough fiber. It means enough colors and variety of plant foods and phytonutrients. We want people to be eating enough to keep them full for 3 to 4 hours is kind of a sweet spot that we've found. And obviously eating enough protein and fiber and all of that plays a role there. We want to make sure that we are including carbohydrates, but maybe not too many, and also not too little, and focusing on the right carbohydrates, the colorful plants, the nutrient-dense carbohydrates. We want to talk about reducing refined carbohydrates. We might talk about adjusting caffeine or alcohol intake, increasing minerals. These are all things that would be things that we'd want to start working on right away, but then these would absolutely be long-term goals that we're working with people on.
Yes, I love that. And I love the focus on blood sugar balance. One of the things I noticed during the challenge is my blood sugar has never been that balanced. And I had so much more energy. I hardly thought about having chocolates in the afternoon. I actually was able to kick my little afternoon caffeine habit that week. Let's really zero in on that Root plate, just because that blood sugar balance is so key for every single person. So, Amy, you mentioned the Root plate. Do you want to tell people what that is?
Yes, absolutely. So the Root plate is a visual representation of the nutrition recommendations that we created. We actually patented it, but it's kind of if you're looking at a dinner plate, you basically want about a quarter of that plate to be a protein source, about a quarter of that plate to be a starch source, or maybe a little bit less, and then half of your plate to be non-starchy vegetables. You also want to include healthy fat in there. So the reason that we created this visual of the root plate is because it does a lot of what I was just talking about. It makes sure that we've got enough protein and make sure that we've got healthy fat. We've got those nutrient-dense carbohydrates or starch sources, and we've got lots of non-starchy vegetables and those colorful plants and fiber. So this is just a way to kind of have this image in the back of your mind and be able to apply this anywhere. So it's not that people are having to follow this super restrictive, like have to follow a perfect recipe, anything like that. Like you can apply this anywhere. If you've got this image in the back of your mind, you can use it as a guideline. Nothing ever needs to be perfect, but if you just are able to start to see, do I have protein in this meal? Do I have a starch source? Do I have healthy fat? Do I have non-starchy vegetables? You can apply this to breakfast, lunch, dinner. You could apply this to a snack. You could apply this to a restaurant. You could apply it to eating out over at a friend's house. It's just kind of something that you have in the back of your mind all the time where you can actually do it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, recipes are great and you all are fabulous at creating them, but it's not realistic to think that you'll be able to do that 100% of the time. I mean, I think about the root plate when I'm in an airport sometimes, at a breakfast buffet, in a soccer tournament with my son. You can still do the root plate even when there are very, options that you might prefer some better options, but you can do it anywhere. So I love that example. And the visual is very helpful for people too. And so going on that theme of this sustainable nutrition that you can do anywhere, there are still some people who might feel intimidated about seeing a dietitian. Maybe they might feel judged or like they're not going to be able to make changes, or they've tried that in the past and it didn't work for them. Tell me how like a typical nutrition visit would go at Root.
Yeah, we definitely don't want anyone to feel intimidated. We are here to help. And we also don't want people to feel like they can't be truthful with us, because if we don't have all the information, then we can't help. And that's all we want to do. Nothing is ever coming from a place of judgment or anything like that. Everyone has 100 things that they need to be thinking about in their life all the time. They don't have to be the nutrition expert. I think that's a main thing that we feel. We don't want people to come to us thinking that they need to know all of this or know the right thing. There's so much nutrition information online in 2025. But what is true and what isn't, and what is right for that person. So meeting with us does not mean like come to this visit and you have to have everything already in place. Like, let us help you. That is all we want to do. A typical visit could look like, number one, we just need to hear the person's story. So we've got the time that we need to be able to hear your story, to hear what main concerns are, what goals you want to work on, hearing a little bit of their history as well. And if there's anything that they've tried already that has been helpful or maybe has not, we can take that into consideration when we're putting together our plan. And then we can talk through those long-term versus short-term plans or ideas and set up a couple actionable goals for the next few weeks. So we also don't want people to feel like they need to like completely overhaul their entire lives with all those other things that they have going on in such a short time frame. Let's pick one or two things that you can focus on just for a few weeks. And then we'll follow up and we'll check in and see how these things are going and how you're feeling. And we'll adjust the plan as needed and set new goals to focus on and kind of build on the plan from there.
Yeah, that's great. And then sometimes we actually get into these therapeutic diets. I think, elimination diets are big in the functional medicine space. It's one of the things that we're taught as doctors of IFM and some of our nutrition training. And they can be helpful for people, but can you speak a little bit more to like how we would use therapeutic diets at Root?
Yeah, so we do use therapeutic elimination diets at Root. I would say most commonly for gut health and autoimmune concerns. But one of our biggest differentiators from a lot of other practices is that we don't put everyone on the same elimination diet from day one. Instead, we take time to understand their current eating habits, their relationship with food, medical history. And sometimes we might even want to do something like test for celiac disease before eliminating gluten. So before starting someone on an elimination diet, we always want them to have like foundational principles of good nutrition down. So maybe Amy and I can actually take a step back and review some of like what we see as the foundational principles. And then we'll talk a little bit more about like what elimination diet might look like working with the Root team. So One of the most important things we want people to get down is working towards eating a diverse diet full of whole foods. So by whole foods, think single ingredient foods like fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, potatoes, nuts, seeds, olive oil, nutrient-dense protein sources like eggs, poultry, fish, grass-fed beef. It's an added bonus if you can get them locally. So we want people to get comfortable making really simple meals. And all of our dietitians really work to help people get comfortable in the kitchen. You know, it can be as simple as learning to throw eggs in a pan together and adding some spinach and some berries, or doing a quick salmon marinade and, roasting it on 400 for 15 minutes. So really just empowering people to get comfortable in the kitchen and teaching them to make simple meals with single ingredient foods is a great place to start.
Yes.
And then phytonutrients. I think Amy's going to speak a little bit to phytonutrients.
Yeah, and just one add-on to the whole foods or single ingredient foods. I think a lot of times we spend so much time trying to look for the best products, the best nutrition labels, the best products, the best ingredients. And of course, there are better products out there that we're going to use sometimes. But the main thing is what Kelsey just explained. It's using whole foods and simple recipes in your own kitchen. And an added benefit of this, which is me going on a random rant, but it helps with budget too. Those healthier products, those better products are more expensive. And so if we're figuring out how to just use single ingredient whole foods in our own kitchens, then that's going to be less expensive as well. I think a lot of times people think functional medicine or using nutrition and functional medicine is going to cost so much money, but it really doesn't have to. Another thing that we are talking about all the time, going back to this root plate and half of your plate being those non-starchy vegetables, is bright colors and phytonutrients. We care about protein, we care about fat, we care about carbs, those macronutrients. We also care about micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, but then we care about phytonutrients. So what this means is nutrients from plant foods. There are thousands of them, and different colors literally mean different phytonutrients. So everyone has heard the phrase, eat the rainbow. That's a real thing. When we are eating all those different bright colors from plant foods, we're getting all of those different phytonutrients.
Yes, and the different phytonutrients do different things to our microbiome, like feeding different bacteria or restricting the growth of certain bacteria like garlic and other herbs.
And then one other thought here, sorry to interrupt, but if we are focusing on single ingredient whole foods that are bright colors, that is what anti-inflammatory means. We're cutting out all of these other added ingredients and we're focusing on single ingredient whole foods with bright colors. All of those bright colors and those phytonutrients play roles as antioxidants and anti-inflammatory. So when we say, eat an anti-inflammatory diet, that's really what we're talking about.
Yes. You all do such a fabulous job of setting people up for success, because if you walk in and hand somebody an elimination diet on day one and they don't have these principles down, we're not going to provide the best outcome for that person. And so that's one of the things we figured out.
Yep.
we didn't
have to figure this out
in the beginning. And now we know we have got to get these, we have to set people up for success.
Yeah, yes. For sure. That actually ties in with the next point. We teach people to adopt an addition mindset. So a lot of people think when they see a dietitian, they're just going to have everything taken away, right? Placing too much emphasis on what's being removed rather than what's being added can have a negative impact. So we like to take a positive approach, focus on what you're adding to your diet. So a mindset shift. Instead of saying, I can't eat bread, say, I can eat sweet potatoes, quinoa, berries, and rice. And just looking for places that you can add vegetables. Can you add a half plate of steamed frozen broccoli to your plate at dinner? Can you add some veggies to your eggs? Can you add leafy greens and hemp seeds to your strawberry banana smoothie? So just always looking for places that you can add those bright colors and nutrients in.
Yes. Love that.
Then I would say a next foundational principle that we help people with that root is, again, just that root plate and blood sugar balance being important for everyone. I like to think of this as step one of healing. If you're on a blood sugar roller coaster all day, it's going to be very difficult to get to whatever that next level of healing needs to look like for you. We need to have that more balanced. We need to have that be sustained throughout the day. And then we can kind of layer on whatever else we need to on top of that.
Yes. Sometimes when people ask me what they can do when they're feeling bad or they feel like everything has fallen apart, I tell them that no matter what, if you have balanced blood sugar, you're going to feel better. Like step one, go back to this core principle that your dietitian, talks about all the time, because no matter what's going on, that's going to be an initial step. You have to have balanced blood sugar so you can deal with the stresses of life and the inflammation and have the energy to deal with it. So yes, very important point. Blood sugar balance is important for everyone at any time of your healing journey.
Last thing that we always try to make sure is that whatever we're working on needs to be like realistic and sustainable. So our mission at Root is actually to bring sustainable and validated functional medicine to the world, because if you can't sustain it, what's the point? So when we're setting goals with our members, we always make sure that we're meeting them where they're at and making sure that they are playing an active role in setting those goals too. We're not going to tell them what their goals are. They need to participate in that goal setting. And then that kind of like brings us to asking about the elimination diet. So we do want people to have those foundational things down first. Like if your blood sugar is not balanced, it's going to be really hard to stick to an elimination diet for 3 weeks. So our Root elimination diet that we use removes gluten, dairy, corn, soy, and egg for 3 to 4 weeks, and then we strategically reintroduce. But it's really hard to remove foods for that period of time if your blood sugar is not balanced, right? You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to end up having cravings. So getting those foundational things down first and focusing on eating more of the nutrient-dense foods is going to be key for success with doing an elimination diet. And also an elimination diet is not going to work for you if it's an elimination diet full of processed foods. So you have to get those foundational whole foods principles down first.
Yes, and making sure you're eating enough. So the blood sugar balance and everything that you just mentioned, like even looking at an elimination diet kind of with that addition mindset viewpoint still, like, are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough fiber with this elimination diet? Or else, like you said, it's going to be very difficult to follow. I will never forget at the beginning of working at Root, I had a member on an elimination diet, and she was so excited to tell me about a product that she found that didn't contain egg, which, by the way, in our Root elimination diet, we do have people reintroduce eggs first, because if people are able to eat eggs, we absolutely want them to be able to. Very nutrient-dense food, but sometimes it is a sensitivity for people. But she was so excited that she had found this product. It's called, people might be familiar with it, it's called Just Egg. The name is very misleading because it actually doesn't have eggs at all. It's actually sprouted mung bean, which is great. Like if the only ingredient was sprouted mung bean, then that would be a terrific substitute depending on taste. But unfortunately, the specific product has a very long ingredient list with just a bunch of additives. And
basically,
I didn't have it in me.
That's a good name. Everything but egg.
Yeah. I do think it's called Just Egg. I have to look at this now.
By the way, I think of you every time I see that product at the store.
I know, we all do, because I've gone on this rant, but I just felt so bad because she was so excited. She was trying so hard on this elimination diet, and I just feel like I failed her because we did not have things set up in a way that was going to make this diet successful for her, and that was on me. So I have that in the back of my mind always now. And that is why we approach things differently at Root now. We've learned that, yes, you have to have those foundational principles before you can start something like that.
Yes. Otherwise, you get stressed and panicked and it's, 7 o'clock at night and you're really hungry and you just give up. So, yes. The dietitians support our members in so many ways in between visits. And, as doctors, every doctor at Root would say, well, they'll never practice functional medicine without a dietitian again, because we're so lucky to have you and such a key to our members' success. Tell us a little bit more about how you support the work of the Root doctors.
Yeah, I can start talking about this. So my favorite part actually about working at Root is our doctor and dietitian model. I love working with our doctors who are so knowledgeable and, again, care so much about the nutrition aspect. But working as a team, I think, number one, I would say you've got this team putting their brains together for each member's case. So whether it's just the doctor and the dietitian seeing that member together, or whether it's our whole team putting their brains together as needed for someone's case, but you've got just all this brain power going into it, and we each have more time. So the doctor doesn't have to use their time during their visit to talk about nutrition, and then for our visit, we have time to really take a deep dive and talk about all of these details as far as nutrition goes with our members. So that's one way that we support the doctors by, just having them be able to spend time discussing other things that are needed with their members. But then we can also check in on things for people. These visits are spaced out in different ways, and we're able to just check in even on like, hey, how are supplements going? Like, you talked to the doctor about X, Y, and Z. How is that going? How are you feeling about this? Do we need to troubleshoot anything? Do you need help figuring out how to take your magnesium supplement? Like, there are just so many things that we can be checking in on. And then if something happened between the doctor and dietitian visit that they're updating us on, we can in turn give that update to the doctor. So even if they didn't see their doctor and be able to tell them that in a visit, they saw us, and now we've got all of this updated information that we can be talking through together.
Awesome. Well, to wrap up this podcast episode, why don't each of you leave us with just one nutrition tip that could be helpful for anyone?
Okay, I'll go first. I would say if you're going to choose to work on one thing, I would say work on increasing your confidence in the kitchen and start making most of your meals at home. So no matter what you're making at home, most of the time it's going to be better than what you would get if you were to go to a restaurant. So you're going to have full control of all the ingredients and your portion sizes. So start cooking more of your meals at home is my takeaway.
Great.
And I second Kelsey's takeaway. I'm just kidding. I do completely agree with that, though. And if I had to say one other thing, I would probably say making sure you're eating enough protein, because it's going to help keep your blood sugar so stable throughout the day, and it's going to help make sure that you feel full and satisfied and you're not going on the blood sugar roller coaster and having cravings all day long.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That wraps up today's episode. Please stay tuned for lots more functional medicine and nutrition.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get to the Root podcast. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who might benefit, and leave us a review. For more resources and to connect with us, visit rootfunctionalmedicine.com. Remember, your health journey starts with understanding the root cause. Join us next time.